Hello, everyone. Today, we will listen to a story about a woman's adultery. For most men, having a lover for a wife is a secret. But I knew about my wife's cheating. I knew that behind my back, she was having an affair with my boss who was 20 years older than her. He would send me on business trips on purpose so that he could sleep with her in our house, in our bed. He himself was also married. To put me on my guard, he paid me well and regularly wrote me pretty decent bonuses. And half the office knew about it and kept quiet. What betrayed my wife was her best friend who had been covering for her the whole time. I was amazed at how good an actress my wife was. Despite the fact that our son was 8 years old, her having sex with another man was not embarrassing at all. My first urge was to beat my lover and kick the unfaithful wife out of the house, but I held back. I remembered that revenge is a dish to be served cold. I waited 3 whole years. I pretended not to notice anything, worked hard, tried as much as possible to gain the chief's trust and put his guard down. In the meantime, I was already preparing escape routes and ground for a landing. Secretly from his wife, I built a house in another city, which he registered in my sister's name. I was stealing and saving money for the rest of my life. And one day, I struck a blow that no one expected. I simply handed over a very profitable project to a competitor for a tidy sum, as well as all the details of hidden grey transactions to the tax authorities and to the Department for Combating Economic Crimes. I told my wife that I knew about her cheating with my boss when they came to search the firm and seized all the documentation. She kneeled and cried, saying that she had tried for us and that she was disgusted by all this. I also told her lover's wife about the affair, who had nothing to hold on to with this old bankrupt macho. She filed for divorce. Then I found out that he had died of a heart attack in the hospital. And I didn't feel sorry for him. For revenge, for 3 years, I played the role of a loving, naive, full husband, and faithful as a dog employee. Now I have a house, a common-law wife, an accountant from that firm, and a small auto parts store. My son lives with us and my ex is still alone. Once a month, I transfer some money to her, so she doesn't starve to death. Comments: Yona, you actually sold your wife. Knowing and hoarding the money you got because of your wife. Not because you are such a good specialist, it does not do you credit. No divorce, not act like a pimp. You both decided to improve your financial situation at the expense of the chief. So why would he take revenge? He was paying both of you. Yuri, I've noticed only women judge. The dog is treated like a dog, and she doesn't deserve any money. Author. Am I the one who sold her out? She's the one who sold everything and trampled all my feelings and faith. She was no longer my wife, my woman, or even my person. All these 3 years, I have been the object of ridicule and humiliation and lies. By what writer are you calling me to conscience? Did she have an ounce of conscience when she betrayed me? Did this have a conscience when he meddled in someone else's family? They think that because they have a lot of money, they are gods and can rule over the fate of other people, trample and humiliate other people, destroy families, and with no thought of impunity. No. Don't you dare approach me. I did what had to be done. So if I had punched him in the face and served at least 3 years in prison, who would have benefited from it? So if I left my wife, where would I go without money? For 3 years, I felt like a spy behind enemy lines. I knew there was a reward waiting for me at the end, and I wasn't wrong. Kara. Well done. Competently and accurately thought out, calculated and implemented everything. Respect Pect. Although the money should not have been transferred to the former, let her feed herself with her many skills. She is looking for a new sponsor. Lana. What are you giving her money for? Let her go to work, she is so quick to do both ours and yours. She did it in time. Don't worry. She won't be lost. And you are just a virtuoso who overturned them all. 2. I was once told such a story. There was a woman working in the canteen. Women on the women's staff often talked about their homes, their children, their families. Galina never told anyone anything. She just kept quiet. Another attraction was that always wore dresses below her knees and warm, dark cotton stockings. What was strange was that she never took her stockings off in the heat or even in the summer. One day Galina and Natalia were put on the same night shift to bake for the morning to bake confectionery in the morning. The women did an excellent job and sat down for tea and cookies. Natasha was a talkative person and talked about her husband and children. And one day, she asked Gali, "Do you have a family of children?" Galina raised her eyes full of tears, and after a few minutes later, she answered, "My husband died 3 years ago, and her son is gone." She thought about it. Natasha didn't interrupt. Natasha did not ask anything further. Maybe the person did not want to talk about the subject. And then Galina began her own story. She suddenly took off her stockings and Natasha saw a terrible sight. Her calves were torn out. There were terrible healed wounds. Natasha jerked with horror at what she saw. Putting her stockings back on, Galina said without embarrassment, "This son is his work. My son grew up to be a good bright boy. We brought him up. We spared no expense. He finished the institute, became a surgeon in the city of D. He lives well and has built a big house, but this profession changed him. He became something gloomy, cruel, greedy, and avaricious for money. He saw me less often. What did he need an old mother for? My husband died, and my son stopped talking to me. And then one day, he called and said, 'Come and see me right away. I'm going to live abroad to say goodbye.' I was surprised at his hospitality and said I would be at 18 o'clock. He promised to meet me. It so happened that I arrived not at 6 p.m., but at 3 p.m. I didn't call him back. I thought it would be a surprise. I took a cab to his fancy house, rang the bell. Number 1 opened. I had my own key. So I went in. I put my bags in the pantry. There were 2 sheepdogs running around the house. They greeted me friendly and lay on the floor in the hallway. I walked through the huge, gorgeous house and thought, if this is how they live, why would they go abroad? Suddenly a car pulled up and I hid behind the thick velvet brown curtains for a surprise. My son didn't come in alone, but with a man, carrying a rug. I wondered why he needed a rug. The dogs were in the hallway and didn't give away my presence. My son and the man put the rug down. My son pressed some kind of device and some complicated apparatus emerged from the table. I was standing behind the curtain, and for some reason I did not come out. They unwrapped the rug and there was a girl. I was numb. After putting the girl on the table, they hooked the machine to her and sucked out all the blood. The son said, "That's it. You'll take the body out tonight. Do you know where?" He looked at his watch and added, "My old lady will be here in a minute. We'll get the rest of the blood and you can hand over the arsenal." I was standing behind the curtain with my hands over my mouth, afraid to make a move. My son pushed the button. The table parted, and they threw the corpse into the table hid somewhere and they pulled out a cognac and drank another shot. "It's time. Let's go to the train station," said the son, and they quickly got out. The car drove off. I was shaking with fright. How could I give birth to such a monster? I went to the exit. I wanted only to run away from the fearful house. The dog suddenly became angry and did not let me to the door. I sat down on the sofa standing by the door and began to move quietly towards the door. When it was already quite close, I rushed towards it. The dogs grabbed both my legs, but I managed to get away and shut the door. They roared like animals, and I ran down the street, shocked with pain and fear. Having torn pieces of cloth from a combination, I tied my legs. And when wriggling in pain to my friend, she greeted me with horror, washed the wounds, went to the hospital. The wounds were treated and stitched up. I was questioned. She said that a dog had bitten me in the street. I received shots for tetanus and was hospitalized for a week. Instead of a week, I was hospitalized for 3. A friend came to visit me, then sent me home. My son went abroad. I never saw or heard from him again. I didn't report him to the police, my son, after all. Although he was not going to spare me. I changed my place of residence, and now I live as a homeless person without clan or tribe. What do you think, Natasha? You should have reported the bastard. Natasha sat up and did not know what to say. She felt uncomfortable with everything she had heard last night. That was why Galina wore stockings and was withdrawn. Paul woman, Natasha thought. 3 months later, an elderly woman knocked at the investigator's door. She somehow tiredly sat down in a chair and put an envelope on the table. "Don't ask me anything," she said sadly. "I described everything. Find him, punish him." She got up and left the office. 2 weeks later Galia died and did not take the secret of her son with her. A criminal case was opened for the letter. Galina's son was found through Interpol, and after a long investigation was sentenced to 14 years with confiscation of property. Who knows if that's a little or a lot? I think it's a little. Many years later, I remembered this sad story and told it to you.